Good morning, President Warner and board members. My name is Kem Marks, and I'm with the Rosewood Initiative. I will be providing some written testimony, and I appreciate your allowing me a few extra seconds to read this. I am here today to speak about the bus line on 162nd and 158 Avenues, road that have recently been initiated or planning. Rosewood Initiative appreciates Trimet's finding resources to initiate this service. However, our position continues to be that the 100 or so service hours for this route are insufficient. These hours work out to service Monday through Friday with totally inadequate 45-minute headways and no weekend service at all. And this is inadequate to the community's needs for many different reasons. One, the gap in north-south service between Southeast 122nd and 181st is 2.9 miles. The only direct transit connection to the Columbia Corridor for East Portland and West Gresham is the number 87, requiring extremely long out-of-direction trips. The same is true for people who need to do other business. They have to do extremely long out-of-directional trips that could easily be done in half the time or less. East Portland and West Gresham will experience a significant portion of the influx of new residents over the next decade. A large percentage of the current and future residents include communities of concern, including people of color, elders, and immigrants and refugees. East Portland and West Gresham have historically lagged behind other parts of the system. As there are numerous reasons for the need for frequent and weekend service, we also recognize there are barriers, including funding and infrastructure improvements to ensure safe access to transit, which involve multiple jurisdictions. Yesterday, representatives from Rosewood and Trimet met to discuss these issues, and although we did not come away with a quote-unquote formal agreement, we did come to an understanding that Trimet will work with Rosewood community partners and the numerous jurisdictional partners to establish a working group to concentrate on infrastructure and service improvements along the line, much as Trimet and the City of Portland did on 122nd Avenue. Rosewood sees this as a positive step forward. We will be reaching out to the other jurisdictional partners to come to the table. In conclusion, there are potential funding sources that should be considered for both operation and infrastructure improvements. These include a possible employee payroll tax and a bond measure sponsored by Trimet. If these funding sources become reality, a portion should be used to increase service and provide for access to transit for this specific route and other East Portland and West Gresham projects. It goes without saying that Oregon 217, the Rose Corridor, Abernathy Bridge, and the Southwest Corridor are a long way from the outer east side. Wisdom and history suggest it should not be neglected. And a little off of my written testimony, I would add that a little unsolicited advice: if the bond measure that you all are looking at moves forward, a lot of people who are not going to benefit from the items that are projects I listed a few seconds ago are going to have a hard time figuring out why they should support that bond measure. If they do not see direct or even semi-direct benefits, I can tell you that the people in the outer areas that do not benefit from these projects will not support this bond measure, and that will leave you all in a significant hole. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, Trimet board members.
Good morning.
My name is Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. No relation to Mr. Terrell Johnson, who was executed, killed by Trimet police officers within these last 2 weeks. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks yesterday. I think there's a lot to talk about, but we shall have a brief moment of silence to remember Mr. Terrell Johnson, killed on Trimet property by Portland police, working as Trimet police. Certainly he deserves more time than that, but there's many things we need to talk about. More and more people will be talking to you about the benefits actually of having unarmed transit police. They can't kill people with their guns, but also armed police, it seems, are becoming more of an escalator than a de-escalator. Groups will be talking to you about the need for a moratorium on fair enforcement and fair checkpoints. It's really a gross waste of resources when a MAX pulls up to a stop and there's 8 armed people blocking every MAX door. It's not efficient. It doesn't positively contribute to the revenue stream. It concerns Commissioner Amanda Fritz on the Portland City Council. It was an issue when we were debating whether we should go ahead and fund things back when Chief Modica was in the situation for leading the Trimet Police. The budget process has got to be more participatory so we don't end up with insane results like building a mini Gitmo in Old Town Chinatown. People are just calling it the Trimet jail, but it's really more of an interrogation cell. I'm not saying there's going to be waterboarding happening there. I'm just saying that it's only a few blocks from the interrogation cells we already have in our fabulous jail. So I hope that you'll work very closely with the PDC to find a much better way to use these federal funds. I know they can't be used for things we really need, like fare mitigation for very low-income people or even free fares for ultra-low-income people. But I hope you'll very seriously look to engage constructively with the PDC, Dr. Morlan Kapua and other members on that board, so that we can see that, I believe it's federal grant money, used for something much more community beneficial than interrogation cell jails. Another useless thing that's slipped into the Trimet conversation lately is more lanes of freeway. Nope. Don't need more lanes of freeway. I mean, you can make the argument that they're needed, but when people have bad behaviors of excessive car use, single occupancy vehicles, you shouldn't enable that in this. Even if we went to all electric vehicles, it's still insane to kill nature to put down pavement. And I don't know, can I find you on eBay? I hear that Governor Kate Brown has you all up for auction. So I think that somewhere between you and Metro, there needs to be a discussion working group on how, in a country that used to be proud of its democracy, regardless of how imperialist we were, could have a Trimet system that's not privatized under Ports Dubai or somebody, but is led by the elected Metro government. I appreciate your willingness to serve under appointment from the governor, but look, my clock is faster than your little blinky light. So thank you for your service, but please consider the idea that your engagement, that Trimet should transition to either being under Metro or separate elected board. And let's not forget Terrell Johnson, and that the city of Portland was sued by the United States Department of Justice for situations of people with mental health issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, the next two I have coming up are Joe Walsh and James Shurtleff.
No guns, no sweet. No guns, no sweet. Moratorium now.
Mr. Joe Wall and James Shurtleff. All right, thank you. Mr. Walsh, I'm sorry, is that you?
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh, and I represent Individuals for Justice. I wasn't going to speak here today because, number one, I'm not feeling that well, and number two, I didn't know if I'd be qualified to convince you of anything. You know, I know we have public testimony, and with the city council and the county, it's getting to the point where we look at you and you're looking at your watches for us to shut up, to get it over with, you know. And you have a budget that you're going to spend $11 million on a place for what? To hold people, to arrest them, to interrogate them? That's not your job. Your job is to get me on the 4 bus, to get me here. That's your job. So how do I convince you that we are in terrible, dangerous times right now? Every morning I get up, I ask my wife, because she's usually the first one out watching television. I say, how bad is it? And every morning for the last 3 weeks, she said to me, it's bad. It's really bad. From the national level to you. And I know that you guys are doing your civil duty and you're trying to do the best you can. I'm giving you that. As an activist, I'm giving you that. Why would you spend $11 million? And why do you have so many cops with guns? You don't need cops with guns. You know, sometimes I forget my pass. And if I remember, I go back up and I get it, or I pay the $1.25, which is really good for me, that $1.25, and not the $2.50. That's important. And it's important for the students, and it's important for the people that are homeless, that they need to travel, so they take the risk of traveling, and you arrest them, and now you want to build a place to keep them. Why? That's not your job. Do your job, please, and get away from this $11 million. And be creative. And say, you know what? We got a problem. We got 1,500, if you talk to some people, 5,000 if you talk to other people, of people just surviving one day. One day, tomorrow. That's all they're interested in, tomorrow, to get through today. Take the $11 million and help them, for God's sakes. Would you please do it for the humanity in you? I'm looking at your eyes, and you're human. You're not animals. You're human. You have human spirit. And if you go before God someday, and you have to answer for people dying on the streets because you use $11 million to lock them up, he's not going to be happy, or she's not going to be happy.
Thank you, Mr.
You're going to be in a lot of trouble. So please,
Thank you.
in the name of God, stop it!
Thank you very much. Mr. Walsh. Thank you. Wow.
That's a tough one to follow. I'm James Shurtleff, a concerned citizen. I also believe that it's critical that we view ridership through the lens of social justice, not criminal justice. And I urge the board to reject the $11 million for the detention center. Thank you.
Thank you.
No guns, no sweep.
All right. All right. All right, the next two we have are Guy Berliner and Russell Brown.
I'm Guy Berliner. I come to you with a perspective. I used to be a huge Trimet fan and advocate, And I have to say, I'm not bristling with statistics and studies to share with you, but I am feeling a white-hot rage. And I'm one of the folks that you really need to have on your side, so this is bad. I've witnessed a young woman with a child in tow on her way to daycare get yanked off the train, not because she didn't have the fare, but because she hadn't validated her ticket. So now she's going to be late to daycare, late to her job, maybe lose it, maybe lose her housing as a result, all because, God forbid, she didn't pay exactly the right fare because she was neglectful, or maybe she cheated, God forbid. But what are the consequences for her, for her child? This is really outrageous. When I first came to Portland, I used to have folks visit me back before you yanked TIRELESS Square away from us. And I remember most of my relatives are fairly, well off. They don't necessarily need to take transit. But I'd take them around and show them the cultural district, as we call it in places. And we'd get on the trains, we'd get on the buses, and they'd ask me, well, where do I pay, how much? And I'd tell them, you don't, it's free, we're in TIRELESS Square. And they'd all marvel, wow, what a charming, what a gracious, what a sophisticated city Portland is. And now all of a sudden, you have loads of people who are middle or upper middle class who are big advocates for transit. You've lost that. You've destroyed one of the greatest goodwill ambassadors for transit that anyone could ever have come up with because of this niggling obsession with making sure that everybody at every single instant, at every single nanosecond, pays the exactly correct amount of money. There's a name for that ideology. It's called neoliberalism. It's called neoliberal capitalism, and it's gotten us to the point where the polar ice caps are melting, and we may only have 10 years left of this bloody civilization before it collapses. This is the wrong approach, folks. There are such things as virtuous circles, and there are such things as vicious circles. We're now in a vicious circle. When you put stinginess and greed and viciousness out into the world, you multiply it. When you put generosity, compassion, and empathy out in the world, you multiply that. Which do we want? Do we want a virtuous circle or a vicious circle? Because we're in a vicious circle now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
My name is Russell Brown. I'm an alum from Cleveland High School. I am here for Terrell Johnson, and I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't want to cry during public testimony. I will say Terrell and I went to high school together. He played football. We were in the same journalism class. We didn't know each other well, but we always got along. I want to echo much of what has already been said about the circumstances surrounding Terrell Johnson's death. And I also want to ask the board to stop allowing different agencies, different police agencies, to monitor transit stations together. It's ridiculous. Ahir Johnson should be fired. I recognize you don't have complete control over that, but you need to help us hold the police accountable for this. This was completely and utterly ridiculous. 2 police officers from different agencies should not be allowed to work together on the same case. Terrell Johnson was fleeing the scene, okay? Y'all are asking us to, or the police department has been asking us to just look at the facts. I'm looking at the facts, and looking at the facts, I'm calling this murder.
Amen, brother.
Thank you. So I have Shannon from the Sisters of the Road and Diana Remke from Oregon Physician for Social Responsibility.
No guns, no sweeps. No guns, no sweeps. Moratorium now.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon, and I'm here as a representative of Sisters of the Road. And for those unaware, Sisters is right on the corner of 6th and Davis. We've been there since 1979, and we are a low-cost restaurant where people can work for their meals. A lot of the people that we serve are living outside. A lot of the people we serve are transit dependent and poor. And of course are disproportionately people of color, trans people, people who are marginalized by other systems. So I'm here with a few different things to say about the valid outrage that people are experiencing. And I also think this is a really awesome turnout for your board meetings. Do you usually get this level of community engagement? That's pretty great. And that's something that you should maybe take that energy and run with it. So we've all got ideas. And some of the things that Sisters is bringing to your attention as places where we think that you could look for solutions moving forward are participatory budgeting. It's quite possible, though I think unlikely, that the promised savings from moving this transit station would have been something a community group would have liked. It's also more likely, in my opinion, that people would have preferred other capital improvements. And you don't know that. And I think that's the problem, is that you don't have that community buy-in into your budget. So where can you get that, and where can you learn what the community would prefer to have done with that money? Secondly, the fear and distrust of transit enforcement of all kinds. People, especially at Sisters, use Trimet because it's shelter for a day. It's somewhere warm, it's somewhere cool. And it's necessary for survival. A low-income fare would be key. That's one thing, obviously, that I think you all can do. And I think the work being done to keep fare enforcement out of the criminal justice system is good. Certainly a move in the right direction, but definitely needs to be better. Musical interlude. Also, contracting with municipalities' law enforcement is what leads to the needless and senseless killing of people who are using transit. The Terrell Johnson killing was because of a militarized police, and that flies in the face of everything that Trimet stands for, or purports to stand for, in terms of a public transit system, and being a public good. So you all have an opportunity to use your leverage as people that are contracting with these municipalities to say, this is not what we want out of the people who are enforcing things on our public transportation system. People do not need to be armed on our public transportation system. You're getting the same problems that were coming out of that DOJ settlement because you're using the same people in the same system. So you need to look at your systems and change them. Training on nonviolent de-escalation, on community resources, on mental diversity are all things that could be put into a new and more equitable safety system on Trimet. So I should stop. But I just think that you can look to places where you can avoid this in the future and take this energy moving forward. What can you learn? What can you implement to avoid senseless deaths, to avoid needless harassment, and let equity drive safety measures moving forward?
Thank you, Shannon. Ms. Remke?
My name is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Dr. Diana Rempe. I'm a community psychologist, and I live in North Portland, and I'm here representing Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility, my family, and my community. Oregon PSR, as we call it, to make it shorter, uses the values and expertise of medicine and public health in our work to alleviate the gravest threats to human health and survival. Our work on climate change has led us to envision the path to a low-carbon, healthy climate future where the health, well-being, and happiness of people and communities is prioritized. So mass transit plays an important and major role in our transition to a healthy, safe, and just future where our climate's protected and ease of mobility enhances opportunity for all citizens, especially those who are marginalized in our current system. Personally, I love Trimet. Right, I don't own a car. I use the bus and the MAX all the time, and we have some of the best bus drivers I've ever encountered. But unfortunately, however, my experience as a middle-class white woman is not the experience of so many of the people who use Trimet here in Portland. A recent study at PSU, as we all know, showed that amongst citizens charged with fare evasion, that African American people were more likely to be banned or excluded from Trimet than white people. This trend was more pronounced when the interaction involved local police who were acting on transit duty than when Trimet's fare inspectors were involved. So it is disheartening to see Trimet responding to these findings by proposing an increase in their in-house criminal justice system via spending $11 million to build a new transit police station, which they justify, or you all justify, in part by imagining a 30% increase in police staff in the near future. It's 30%. That's your own numbers. This while ridership is down and while crimes reported by Trimet customers have dropped 40%. So if Trimet is serious about real safety concerns for marginalized people who are disproportionately communities of color, and for Trimet drivers, then you should not be building a jail in order to add more armed police officers to your staff. Transit police should never, ever be armed. Instead, Trimet officers should be well-trained. They should be well-trained in de-escalation techniques and work from a community policing model that adds safety monitors rather than police officers. Instead of a new police station, Trimet should take that money, buy more buses, improve transit centers and bus stops. Trimet should focus all its attention on increasing ridership through first implementing a moratorium on fare enforcement and on fare checkpoints. Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility has a long history of working for peace and demilitarization abroad and at home. A militarized transit system targets low-income people and people of color. Trimet should focus on its core mission and provide all citizens affordable, excellent, reliable, and frequent mass transit. I am urging you all to remove the funding for the transit police facility from the budget you'll vote on today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, the next two that I have are Sydney Summerfield and Keith Schultz. And if you're agreeing with the other folks, I'd like to make sure that we have enough time to get to everybody. Maybe you can just say you agree with what's been said earlier.
No guns, no sweeps. No guns, no sweeps. Moratorium now.
Hi, I'm Sydney Summerfield.
Good morning.
I didn't realize that I was going to be speaking publicly. I just wrote down my comments. But I am here to support the other comments around the detention center. And I'll just leave it at that. She was a wonderful speaker, the last speaker, and I think she said everything that I would like to say, so I second that.
Thank you. Keith, I don't see the code on today, so...
I've got it with me.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't put it on. Yeah. Good morning, Trimet.
Good morning.
Board. Keith. I'm Keith Schultz, a transit-dependent member of Bus Riders Unite from Gresham. I'm here today to share my opposition to the relocation of the transit jail facility. And I'm a frequent user of our public transportation system. It is the only way that I can get around to the places I need to be. And I have been using the Honored Citizen Fare since I have been eligible for Medicare. It has been 6 years since I first got my Honored Citizen ID here. But I have only been asked to show it once while riding transit. You may call it luck, but I know it's because of my white privilege. And I have seen firsthand how Trimet checks for fares on transit. I have been skipped multiple times, not even bothered to show my fare, and seen how they would go directly to people of color first. I would see how people would get nervous at the presence of armed officers, including myself. The relocation of this transit police jail will not improve safety on transit. Future expansion of the transit police station will not improve security. What we need are unarmed transit ambassadors folks who can help people better understand transit and can help people in case of emergencies. We also need a moratorium on fare sweeps, or as you may know them, fare checkpoints. These practices have not increased the safety of our transit system and has been used to intimidate individuals. I hope that this is not the type of customer service that you are trying to achieve. Our community wants full transparency and accountability from this agency. This can be achieved if you engage community in the development of your budgets. Let us help you build a better relationship with your transit riders.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Next up, I have David Bouchard and Justin Norton Keston.
No guns, no sweeps.
No guns, no sweeps. Moratorium now. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm David Bouchard, and I'm the chair of the Research and Advisory Committee for Bus Riders Unite. I'm here before you to express concerns that I have regarding this agency's budget. It is quite clear to us that this agency would rather spend money beefing up the police presence on the transit system without coming to the communities who will be victimized by this unnecessary police expansion. On May 11th, an officer killed Tyrell Johnson at your Flavelle Street Green Line station. This police officer was assigned to your Transit Police Division. The violence and killing by police must stop. Our community does not feel safe with the presence of armed transit police officers. We want to reduce the presence of guns on our system. For the long term, we should look at moving away from police officers patrolling transit. We could replace them with safety monitors or transit ambassadors, people who provide information to better use transit while providing emergency assistance when needed. I mean, this could be a program that could be nationally renowned if it was developed correctly. It could really be something. Armed cops do not make our buses and trains safer. We also demand a moratorium on fare sweeps until Trimet can conduct them in a fair manner without targeting immigrant communities and people of color. Trimet officers have been known to harass riders using intimidation to assert their authority. And recently, some have been questioning riders' immigration status. Trimet needs to improve its transparency and accountability to our community. The current budgeting process is the exact opposite of that. The budget has been developed behind closed doors without any community input. But a participatory budgeting process would help Trimet engage transit riders and rebuild trust with the community. New York City has seen an increase in participation year after year and has developed the type of relationship we want to have with you. One of mutual understanding and trust that Trimet will do the right thing.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Justin Norton Kurtzen. I'm here representing Portland Jobs with Justice, which is a coalition of over 100 labor, faith, community, and student organizations that work together in support of workers' rights and racial and gender justice. And I'm here to express our deep concern and our opposition to the proposed use of this $11 million. The militarization of the Trimet it threatens communities of color. It's an investment in continuing an already troubling disproportionate enforcement on Trimet, and it drains resources that should be used in our community to improve public transportation. Through things like more frequent service, lower and free fares for low-income people, and through improved bus stops. Both riders and drivers and the community in general oppose the continued militarization. They're calling for a demilitarization of Trimet. The recent killing of Tyrell Johnson by transit police, this murder was an unnecessary tragedy. It could have and it should have been avoided, which is exactly why we shouldn't be putting more armed cops on our buses. It's exactly why this money should be being spent for unarmed safety monitors who are trained to de-escalate rather than escalate tense situations. Like other people have expressed, we need a moratorium on fare enforcement and fare checkpoints. These sweeps and checkpoints, they don't improve the safety of our buses. They only cause stress and anxiety for riders, many of whom, as was just said, have shared that enforcement officers are asking them about their citizenship status. In a city, in a county, in a state with sanctuary status. This is unacceptable and it's shameful. Finally, we need a participatory budget process. The current process doesn't allow community members any influence in the creation of our public transportation system. We come here, like Joe said, we come here and we talk and you stare at us and it really doesn't seem like you care. And I really hope that you will prove me wrong, that you will prove us wrong on that today. Because you should care. You should care about what the riders and the workers, the people who use and who make the transit system run, you should care about what they think about this. I really hope that you do.
Thank you. All right, next I'm going to call Nick Phillips and Carrie Waters.
No guns, no streets. No guns, no streets. Moratorium now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Hi.
Nicole.
I'm Nick Phillips. I'm on the leadership committee with Bus Riders Unite and a member of the Transit Equity Advisory Committee. Hi. So, I was having difficulty pulling together my comments this morning. And it suddenly hit me why. And that's because we're back where we started. With the transfer extension, the service changes and the fare increases, e-fare, the end of Fairless Square, these were all decisions that were made without anyone talking to the people that it most affects. And what happened every single time is what you see now. People have a habit of getting very vocal when they feel like that someone's not listening to them or cares about what happens to them. When these decisions are made, we're not questioning whether or not you are making a good business decision. I understand that you're going to do that. You're an organization and you're trying to run a business. The problem is that for those of us who board several times a day, that's me, decisions are made that usually will affect how they use the system. You're adding a police precinct, and I understand the financial. I understand what you're doing with that. I also understand that even though it's been years since my first encounter with fare enforcement, every time I go through Rose Quarter, I'm looking for officers. My heart rate goes up. I'm not over that experience yet. And this is happening every single day to people. When we ask you for things like participatory budgeting, and when we ask that your public engagement be intentional, even when we're asking about a moratorium on the sweeps, it's not because we're questioning whether or not you know how to run a business. It's because we depend on this service, and we have to feel comfortable using it. I tend to avoid the Rose Quarter. So as you're listening to people today, I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said. You're hearing it. Instead of just hearing and reacting to what's being said, listen. Listen to the words that they're using. Pay attention to the people that you see before you. Try to understand why they're saying these things. I would like to believe, and I approach you each time with the hope that you do understand, or that you can understand where we're coming from. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Waters. I'm a member of the Tlingit tribe, and I'm here today on behalf of the Native American Youth and Family Center and the Transportation Justice Alliance. At the Transportation Justice Alliance, we seek an affordable, equitable, and environmentally sustainable transportation system. We operate under the principles of affordability, accessibility, and safety, healthy communities, healthy environment, meaningful participation, economic justice, and accountability. The proposed jail is in stark opposition to each and every one of these values. It is frankly a slap in the face to our entire community. Now, we prioritize safety. We want a safe system. We could benefit from, I think someone mentioned transit ambassadors. We need fair educators. We do not need more fair enforcers, and we definitely do not need this jail. I support much of what I heard already, so I will keep this brief. But as a person of color that can pass, I have passing white privilege. I have seen the racial profiling that happens when I'm on transit. I hear stories on a regular basis throughout the Native community, as well as other communities of color as we build cross-cultural climate justice. And in order to move towards this livable region that we all boast about throughout the nation and even internationally, we need to walk our talk here in the city of Portland, in the Portland metropolitan area, and to focus on the things that really matter for our community so that we can afford to get to the places we need to go. And I believe that our community really wants to work with you. We really want to support you in these processes. We want Trimet to succeed. So I encourage you strongly to consider participatory budgeting as a method of moving forward priorities that matter to our entire community and that will meet Trimet's needs as well. So I hope that you will hear everything that we've been sharing with you today. I know that you have to make a decision today on the budget, and I hope that you'll do the right thing. No transit jail.
Huey Ong and Cameron Whitler. I don't know whether, was it? Witten, excuse me, thank you. Oh, yes, Cameron.
No guns, no sweeps. Moratorium now.
Hello, my name is Huey Ong, Executive Director of Opal Environmental Justice Oregon. Well, I would love to actually take credit for organizing this amazing turnout of people here today. This actually wasn't Opal's work. This crowd is here because of Trimet's management. Directors, you are facing a test of your leadership today. Will you hold your employees accountable? Here before you are the people in the community you are appointed to serve. There are people who ride the system because they have to. Some things that is not true of your managers. You're hearing people who are justified in their anger and fear they feel. These people are angry and targeted because of your employees' actions. If Trimet did not contract armed police officers, at least one young man would still be alive. Decision makers within the agencies have installed an electronic fare system nobody asked for and a transit police detention and interrogation facility, a jail, we don't need. They place armed and poorly trained police on our trains. They have escalated and the presence of militarized law enforcement who have inappropriately and without jurisdiction asked riders about citizen status. These unaccountable management decisions are making the system less safe for the people who depend on them. Meanwhile, the buses are running slower than they have in 16 years. It's no wonder ridership is on the decline. We want a system that is more affordable, accessible, and frequent. We don't want to ride and risk death, detainment, or deportation. This community demands democratic participation, justice, and accountability. The community is telling you that armed police officers do not make us feel safe. Armed police officers do not make us feel safe. That interrogation and detention are not appropriate use of transit system dollars you could use for new buses, bus shelters, and maintenance to actually make Trimet safer. The fare sweeps intimidates vulnerable people and need to stop. You must have public participation in budgeting and policy making to avoid repeating these mistakes. The community you serve is telling you to show leadership today. Pause on rubber stamping Neil McFarland's budget, address the serious issues we are presenting to you, and create a new path forward. Are you listening?
Thank you.
And it's Hui.
Good morning, Board, Manager McFarland. My name is Cameron Witten, and I'm one of the founding members of Trimet's Transit Equity Advisory Committee, served on that for 2 years from 2013 to 2015. I have fond memories working with Trimet staff and board members, including John L. Bell, Jake War, Consuelo Zaragoza, and many others. At that time, most of our work was around transit affordability and transit access. One of the things that has since come up much has been the issue of transit discrimination and profiling. Earlier this year, Multnomah County and other district attorneys agreed that they were no longer going to prosecute fare evaders for interfering with public transit. And at that time, there were reports that almost 3/4 of people who were charged with that were charged because they were fare evaders. While that was a glaring example of transit discrimination, it's not been the only one. Months after, just last month, Terrell Johnson was killed by a transit officer, which put a bright light on the issue of transit profiling here in Trimet. And while I believe that Trimet can be a model of excellence to transit agencies across this country, it's hard to be a model of excellence when you have blood on your hands. Spending $11 million on policing sends the wrong messages to our transit-dependent community. I'm sure all of us in this room would like to see similar investment towards the elimination of discrimination by public transit. Last month, Trimet published a public blog saying that it was asking the legislature to handle fare evasion outside of the court system in order to bring justice to the transit system. But asking for justice is not enough. Trimet has the bargaining power with its 68 transit officers to de-arm safety professionals, prioritize de-escalation, bring transparency to transit discrimination, and bring accountability to the role that Trimet has had in excluding and insulting our low-income communities and communities of color. And I have my own personal story when it comes to transit discrimination. It was 2 years ago, last May, and while most of our transit vehicles are beautiful, I was one that was super janky, and I made a comment to the operator asking if this was safe, because there was water everywhere flying in my eyes, making people unsafe. There was a burning chemical smell in this vehicle, and instead of the operator responding to me and telling me it was okay, this would be handled, called the police and said that I was a threat to everybody's safety in that vehicle. And as a person who is black, formerly homeless, low income, I know I come with privileges. Before an officer was able to come to the scene, I was already on the phone with the public, the transportation director, Leah Treat, And even though I was on the phone with her, it did not save me from being charged with a misdemeanor and thrown off that transit. I had to go through the court process. That being said, I know many other people in my situation which they would have been charged with an IPT, Class A misdemeanor, or they might have lost their lives. So the argument by Trimet is that this $11 million will improve community safety. My question is, how many millions of dollars are you willing to invest to make sure that we can prevent another death from ever happening on Trimet? Thank you.
All right, Don McFarling and Phil Richmond. I don't see Don McFarling or Phil Richmond. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dan McFarling, and I would like to strongly endorse the comments I've heard today. I plan to talk about about nuts and bolts rather than the human aspect, but I hope you are listening to the testimony you have heard, and I strongly endorse it. I've included a card there that may not seem relevant, but it is extremely relevant to security and safety. Guns don't make security and safety. I'm a lifelong student and advocate for good, effective public transportation and good transportation policy. I've been a member of AORTA for 40 years and a director for most of those years. Transit ridership in Seattle is growing. Ridership in Portland is declining. Unlike Portland, Seattle has a long-term vision. Seattle has long-term goals. Seattle is building a light rail system designed to carry large numbers of people rapidly from one side of the town to the other. Unlike Portland, Seattle provides frequent bus service carefully integrated with light rail. Trimet is driving down the wrong road. In Portland, on our Milwaukee light rail line, Trimet gave no real thought to connecting with buses until after light rail construction was complete. That is extremely poor planning. Because Trimet has failed to plan, light rail to Milwaukee fails to connect with most bus lines in Milwaukee. Unsurprisingly, ridership is not meeting projections. Trimet's job is to provide alternative, interconnected, frequent bus and rail service. Trimet's job is to provide an alternative to our congested roadways. It is not Trimet's job to advocate for more traffic lanes, lanes that will induce more single-occupant vehicles, more congestion, more sprawl, and more carbon emissions. It is not Trimet's job to build jails. We need leadership at Trimet that has knowledge and vision and the desire to provide effective public transportation. And I hope you will look at the Willamette Week article. Thank you.
Thank you.
No guns, no sweeps. No guns, no sweeps. Moratorium now.
Thank you. And the last two I have signed up are Jared Franz and Edith Gillis.
Okay. Good morning, Trimet Board. My name is Jared Franz. I'm the Public Policy and Advocacy Coordinator for ATU 757, the union that represents Trimet employees. And I mean the essential employees of Trimet, not the private security that's in this room or the transit cops that are out harassing riders. I'm here today to express the union's support for a moratorium on fare sweeps, for the demilitarization and decriminalization of our public transit system, and to call for a participatory budgeting process. Look, cops don't make riders and drivers safer. Drivers especially know this. They often spend 45 minutes or longer waiting for the response to a call that they get. And most of the safety and security that happens on the bus happens because of social pressures or other interventions that happen on the bus from other riders or well-informed, well-trained drivers. More cops, more guns do not make people safer. It's security theater and a favorite tool of white supremacy. The union supports decriminalized, non-militarized solutions to fare inspection, like fare inspectors, that the professional union busters at Trimet have systematically gotten rid of over the years and replaced with armed cops. We also support rider advocates, a program that used to exist, a robust program that used to exist here at Trimet, that put community members from impacted communities on buses to interface with drivers and riders and provide information and de-escalation. It was a popular program that was defunded by Trimet to make more money available for armed cops. We also support a participatory budget process, and I'm going to be really quick on why this is necessary. It is never true when Trimet says they can't afford to do what riders and drivers ask for. What they mean is that they have other priorities for the hundreds of millions of dollars that the agency has. So let's be honest. Let's stop misleading the public and saying we can't afford X or we can't afford Y, and start saying we have different priorities than you. Community priorities, worker priorities are not reflected in the Trimet budget. The Trimet jail is only the latest example of this. But you don't have to look very far to find shenanigans in the Trimet budget. $95 million, in fact. You can look this up. It's line 4 on your capital projects, page 1 in your budget. $95 million this year of operating funds, you know, the funds that you always say you never have enough of, are getting transferred to capital projects this year for construction projects. Right? And at the same time, we are being asked to support a statewide regressive wage tax on workers so that Trimet can have more money, presumably to transfer it into their capital construction projects and build a bigger, better jail in a few years. Community priorities need to be represented in this budget. Worker priorities need to be represented in this budget. We demand a stop to fair enforcement sweeps, to militarized and armed cops, and the immediate beginning of a participatory budget process. Thanks.
Good.
I believe that if something is principled, it is good no matter who does it to whom, and it's bad no matter who does it to whom. If it can be a law that's enforced, then it should be an enforceable law. So, if it is an arrestable offense or an excuse to jail someone, which has the probable results of unemployment, houselessness, loss of children, children losing their schools and education, worsening health or death, to be riding on publicly owned roads and rails with publicly funded vehicles, with publicly funded employees, because someone does not have in-time validated fare, then I want you to immediately post and publish your policy for removing all of the board, administration, and employees who have made it so that the vehicles and the routes are not well planned, not well maintained to be on time within the allotted time, that you don't have fare machines that validate it reliably, that you don't have the pay equipment on the bus working reliably, that you don't have enough vehicles in the right routes, in the right locations, and you don't have the right policy to be inclusive of people of low income, of short-term disabilities, of crises, and that you don't have a good policy for de-escalating the tensions that having terrorists on board with guns threatening certain people, certain classes against the Constitution. If you're poor, you're people of color, you have a political agenda that people don't like, or a religious minority, that escalates tension by all. So those of us who are hard-working, tax-paying, small business owners and volunteers in the community say, this is a waste of my money. I'm no longer going to vote for or fund Trimet because you're not providing the services. You've been lying to us. You've been unfair. And you are creating a society of distrust and alienation, of despair and terrorism, so that our young children do not want to ride public transit. They're not wanting to vote for it. They're not wanting to engage in civic responsibility. They're giving up hope, so they're going to go to the streets, go to direct action, go to violence, because you're not allowing better alternatives. So if this is an arrestable offense, then you can all be arrested because you're guilty in causing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.